Hallo meine Damen und Herren und herzlich willkommen zurück. Das ist die 5. Lektion in unserer Reise durch die deutsche Sprache. Wie geht es Ihnen? Es geht mir sehr gut. Now then, or as we say in German, nun. I have a lot in store for us in this lesson, so let's kick things off with some help from another very special guest. And once again, it's someone we've already met and even heard about. The one, the only, Ralf Grüber. Hallo Ralf, da sind Sie. Remember that Ralf ist der Mann von mir. And luckily for us, Ralf has agreed to come by and help introduce this lesson's key grammar and vocabulary. And to that end, we're going to imagine that we've traveled to Germany to visit the Grübers in their hometown of Augsburg. Augsburg liegt in Bayern und ist 80 Kilometer westlich von München. So then, are you ready? Also dann, los geht's nach Augsburg. We've just arrived at der Bahnhof in Augsburg, and Ralf has come to pick us up. After our long trip, it's understandable that we've worked up quite a thirst. In German, we would say, Wir haben Durst. And so we ask Ralf if we can stop into a Kneipe and maybe grab a refreshing Bier, Wein, or Mineralwasser. And then our conversation in the Kneipe goes like this.
Hier ist eine Getränkekarte.
Danke. Eine Flasche Mineralwasser kostet nur 95 Cent.
Ja, das ist günstig.
Eine Cola ist 1,90 Euro. Und ein großes Weizenbier kostet nur 1,70.
Ja, das Bier ist auch günstig, aber der Wein ist teuer.
Ja, ein Weißwein kostet 8,35 Euro.
Und ein Rotwein kostet 9,79 Euro.
Ein Glas oder eine Flasche?
Ich glaube, ein Glas.
Mensch, das ist teuer. Ich bestelle ein Weizenbier.
Und ich bestelle ein Pils.
Und eine Flasche Mineralwasser.
Ein stilles Mineralwasser oder ein Mineralwasser mit Sprudel?
Ein stilles Mineralwasser.
Gut, die Kellnerin kommt.
Now, if you didn't understand every word, keine Panik. Our little dialogue with Ralf in Die Kneipe actually contains pieces of everything we're going to cover today. What's more, later on we'll hear it again. And that will be our chance to gauge just how much we're learning and which parts of this lecture we might want to go back to and review. So just remember this wise German saying, Übung macht den Meister. Literally, it means practice makes the master. It's figurative though, because it's best translated as practice makes perfect. And throughout our journey, you might hear this phrase a few times. So be sure to make a mental note. Übung macht den Meister. Also dann, let's turn our attention to another basic but essential skill. How to count in German. For starters, the verb in German for to count is zählen. And the noun for numbers is die Zahlen. So in German we would say, wir lernen die Zahlen. And now, I get to give you some good news. German numbers are all recognizable cognates. For instance, here's how you count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You see? German numbers are very intuitive if you know English. And here's some even more good news. Counting in German does not involve having to do math in your head, like in French, for instance, where you literally say 60, 10, 7 for the number 77, or even 4, 20, 10, 8 to express the number 98. Oh, my head hurts. Instead, German is more like English. The number 91 is Einundzwanzig, literally 1 in 90. 92 is 92. Or 2 and 90, and so on and so on. Also dann, here again are those numbers up to 10, and this time we'll include the number 0. You ready? Here goes. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 Finger. Moment mal. Ich habe eine sehr gute Idee. Why don't we have a little fun with addition and subtraction? Everybody loves math, right? Also dann. Let's do some simple Matheaufgaben. Basically, the name of this game is going to be Wie Viel, which means how much. Also dann. Here's our first Matheaufgabe. Are you ready? Wie viel ist 2 plus 7? Gut, 2 plus 7 ist 9. Here's Problem Nummer 2. Wie viel ist 9 minus 5? Jawohl, 9 minus 5 ist 4. Our next Aufgabe is this. Wie viel ist 8 plus 2 minus 3? This one's a little harder, right? 8 plus 2 minus 3? Richtig, das ist 7. We can handle 2 more, right? Aber natürlich. Okay, Aufgabe Nummer 4 is this one. Wie viel ist 4 minus 2 plus 8? Richtig. 4 minus 2 plus 8 ist 10. Okay, here's our last one. But this time I'm going to make it a bit more challenging. Wie viel ist 8 plus 2 minus 6 plus 1 minus 5? Kind of tough, right? I wasn't lying. All right, listen again. 8 plus 2 minus 6 plus 1 minus 5. Wie viel ist das? Sehr gut. Das ist 0. Okay then. Let's keep going with our Zahlen, shall we? After 10, we have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and finally 20. Again, if you look closely, you'll see that these are all cognates with the English numbers. And just to prove my point, let's count from 0 to 20 all together one more time. Are you ready? Tief einatmen, tief ausatmen und los. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and finally 20. All of them cognates. I'm telling you, German and English are sister languages. Gut. And now, let's do just a few more Matheaufgaben. This time in a second round of that same game. Wie viel? And here's our first problem. Wie viel ist 20 minus 8? Richtig. 20 minus 8 macht 12. Now, you'll recall that the verb machen means to make. So when we say 20 minus 8 macht 12, we're saying that 20 minus 8 makes 12. Alles klar? Or try this one. Wie viel ist 11 plus 5? Großartig. 11 plus 5 macht 16. Okay, one last Matheaufgabe. Aber Achtung, this one's a doozy. Wie viel ist 10 minus 8 plus 12 plus 6? What do you think? 10 minus 8 plus 12 plus 6. Genau, das macht 20. Well done, meine Damen und Herren. Sehr gut. And with that, we're just about done with our Zahlen. But remember, I promised that today we'd learn how to count to 100. So, after 20, counting in German deviates slightly from the way English assembles its numbers. In fact, German expresses the numbers 21 through 99 in the reverse order of English. Here, for example, are the numbers 21 through 24. See if you can find the pattern. 21, 22, 23, 24. Did you see the pattern? In German, we actually say the integer 1 to 9 first. And the 20 to 90 part, that comes second. So the number 21 is literally expressed as 1 and 20. 21. Note that the eins loses its final S when it comes before the und. It's 21. Following the same pattern, the numbers 22 and 23 are literally 2 and 20 and 3 and 20. 22, 23. Alles klar? I should also note that numbers in German typically aren't capitalized. And, are you ready for this? They're written as one word. No hyphens, no spaces. Even really long numbers are written as a single word. For instance, the number 322.463. Toll! You see? Das macht Spaß, oder? By the way, in a few lessons from now, we're going to apply the same method when we learn how to count to 1,000,000,000. So then, without further ado, and starting at 20, 20, here are all the base 10 sets for counting auf Deutsch. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Wunderbar. And now, how about we just try out our new counting skills, all right? Gut. The name of this game is going to be Wie sagt man diese Nummern auf Englisch? Are you ready? Our first number is 84. 84. Gut. 84 is 84. And remember that we literally say 4 and 80. Our next number is 52. 52. Richtig. 52 is 52. Here's our third number. 78. 78. Sehr gut. 78 is 78. And finally, here's our last number. 99. 99. Das ist richtig. I said 99 or 99. Just like Nina's hit song from 1983. You remember that, don't you? She sang about 99 Luftballons. Okay, clearly she sang it much better than me, so we'll just leave it at that. As for numbers, I have to add just one more thing before we move on to our next topic. Do you remember what number comes after 99 in German? We've heard it a few times in this lesson already. That number? Jawohl, 100. Now, speakers also just say hundert, especially for the numbers that come right after it, as we'll see in our next lesson. 101, 102, 103, and so on. And as I just mentioned, in a later lesson, we'll continue with 103 and so on, and we'll work our way all the way up to eine Milliarde, a billion. Alles klar? Also dann, meine Damen und Herren, now that we've gotten to know our Zahlen from Null to 100, let's direct our attention to another fundamental and, dare I say, wonderful part of the grammar that makes German German. It's indefinite articles. Now, you'll recall that in an earlier lesson, we learned the definite articles, der, die, and das. Well, German nouns can also take an indefinite article. And like the definite articles, these indefinite articles always come before a noun. Just for the sake of comparison, English also has indefinite articles. Two of them, in fact. There's a or a and an. And actually, their meaning is the same as the German indefinite articles. Let me show you what I mean. Consider the difference between the questions, where's the hammer, and where's a hammer? Now, in the first question, the noun hammer, it's old news. That is, it's either already been seen or discussed. And the definite article conveys this immediate context. The hammer in the second question, though, is either not immediately present or it hasn't been brought up yet in conversation. It's a hammer, it's not the hammer. And accordingly, the indefinite article expresses this contextual reality. Indefinite articles work the same in German. They express non-specificness or contextual distance. For example, wo ist ein Hammer? As opposed to wo ist der Hammer? But here's where English and German part ways. Unlike English, which has no grammatical gender for its nouns, German indefinite articles reflect their noun's gender, which, remember, can be either masculine, feminine, or neuter. To see some real-world examples of how German's indefinite articles work, let's go back to our conversation with Ralf in Die Kneipe in Augsburg. Maybe you remember, Ralf told us, Eine Cola ist 1,90 €. To which we replied, Eine Cola kostet mehr als ein Bier? We use two different indefinite articles here, eine and ein. More specifically, we use the indefinite article eine with a feminine noun, die Cola, and the indefinite article ein with a masculine and a neuter noun, der Euro and das Bier. Here's another snippet from our conversation, and it shows this same pattern. Ralf tells us, ja, das Bier ist auch günstig, aber der Wein ist teuer. And then we say, ja, ein Weißwein kostet 8,35 €. And then a few lines later, we ask about whether these prices are for ein Glas or eine Flasche of this wine. Now, the nouns Bier and Glas, they're neuter. Das Bier, das Glas. So we use the indefinite article ein for them. The noun Flasche, on the other hand, is feminine, die Flasche. So we use the indefinite article eine. And the noun Wein, it's masculine, der Wein. And so here, in this grammatical situation, because der Wein is the subject in the sentence, we use the indefinite article ein. By the way, those nouns, Weißwein and Rotwein, they're actually compound words. And here's the deal. In German, compound words will take the gender of the noun that ends that compound word. So, for instance, the noun Bier, it's neuter, das Bier. But then we have the compound noun Bierflasche, Bierflasche. And it's feminine, die Bierflasche, because the noun Flasche is feminine. Even long compound words like Bierflaschensammler, beer bottle collector, they take the gender of the final noun in that compound. Sammler, in this case, is masculine, der Sammler, the collector. So the gender of Bierflaschensammler is masculine, der Bierflaschensammler. As for the eine situation, which, for the record, is our first real taste of German's famous system of grammatical endings, one tip that I can offer right now is this. Start familiarizing yourself with what we call declension tables or declension paradigms. These are little charts that show words like indefinite and definite articles, words that have changeable endings, organized by gender, number, and case. For example, here are the paradigms for the definite and indefinite articles as we've learned them thus far. Notice that the declension paradigm for indefinite articles does not have a column for plural nouns. This is because, just like in English, German ein and eine are only used with singular nouns. So consider this. In English, would we ever say, where is a bakeries? No, never. And in German, it would sound just as ungrammatical if we said, wo ist eine Bäckereien? Ugh. So remember, while there is a definite plural article in German, wo sind die Bäckereien, the indefinite articles in German only modify singular nouns. Wo ist eine Bäckerei? Also dann, Probieren wir es. Let's put our newly learned indefinite articles into practice, shall we? And here is our scenario. Wir sind in Berlin. Und wir haben Hunger. I mean, of course we're hungry. After all, we're walking around Berlin, right? It's a big city and that burns calories. So anyway, we're walking through Berlin and wir sehen eine Bäckerei. We see a bakery. So we go into the bakery and we greet der Bäcker or die Bäckerin with a perfect Guten Tag. And then we see this incredible array of Backwaren. But it's just too much. We're overwhelmed. Aber das ist kein Problem. We simply tell the baker, ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. And then we point to a delicious-looking roll in the display case. And we ask, was ist das? Now, what would the baker tell us? Would the baker say, das ist ein Brötchen? Or would the baker say, das ist eine Brötchen? Richtig. Because Brötchen is a neuter noun, das Brötchen, the baker would tell us, das ist ein Brötchen. And then we point to a pretzel, die Brezel, and we ask, was ist das? Now, would the baker tell us, das ist ein Brezel? Or, das ist eine Brezel? Genau, das ist eine Brezel. Okay, one more. Then we point to an especially delicious-looking donut, der Berliner. And we ask, und was ist das? Would the baker say to us, das ist eine Berliner or das ist ein Berliner? Sehr gut. The baker would say, das ist ein Berliner, because der Berliner is masculine. Also dann, meine Damen und Herren, I hope that last activity with the scrumptious-looking Brötchen, Brezel, and Berliner didn't leave you too hungry. If so, Entschuldigung. Nun, the time has come. We need to return one last time to our conversation with Ralf in die Kneipe in Augsburg. And this time, we should be able to understand more of it than we did at the start of our lesson.
Hier ist eine Getränkekarte.
Danke. Eine Flasche Mineralwasser kostet nur 95 Cent.
Ja, das ist günstig.
Eine Cola ist 1,90 Euro. Und ein großes Weizenbier kostet nur 1,70 Euro.
Ja, das Bier ist auch günstig, aber der Wein ist teuer.
Ja, ein Weißwein kostet 8,35 Euro.
Und ein Rotwein kostet 9,79 Euro.
Ein Glas oder eine Flasche?
Ich glaube, ein Glas.
Mensch, das ist teuer. Ich bestelle ein Weizenbier.
Und ich bestelle ein Pils.
Und eine Flasche Mineralwasser.
Ein stilles Mineralwasser oder ein Mineralwasser mit Sprudel?
Ein stilles Mineralwasser.
Gut, die Kellnerin kommt.
That was better, right? Ach so, Moment mal. Something just occurred to me. Our dialogue with Ralph isn't actually complete. I mean, we didn't place our order. Ach, meine Damen und Herren, can't go into eine Kneipe in Deutschland and not order anything. Also dann. Here's what we'll do. We're going to remedy this right now. And we'll pick up with Ralph telling us the server is coming.
Die Kellnerin kommt.
Was darf es sein?
Ich möchte ein stilles Mineralwasser und ein Weizenbier, bitte.
Vom Fass oder Flaschenbier?
Vom Fass.
Und Sie?
Ich hätte gern ein Pilsner Bier vom Fass.
Sonst noch was?
Nein, danke.
Bitteschön, kommt sofort.
Ja, das ist viel besser. Now we can zoom in on a few more useful phrases for ordering or for purchasing things. And our first phrase is, ich möchte. Ich möchte. Now I admit it's a bit tricky for beginners to pronounce, but it's really a versatile expression. Basically, you can place any noun after it, with or without a definite or indefinite article. For example, ich möchte ein Brötchen. Ich möchte die Suppe. Ich möchte Wasser. Or maybe, ich möchte ein Glas Rotwein. You can even put an infinitive verb after the ich möchte to express that you would like to do something. For instance, ich möchte gehen. I would like to go. Or, Ich möchte tanzen. Basically, this phrase works with any verb. You can even add a noun phrase to it, like ich möchte ein Bier trinken or ich möchte Deutsch lernen. Get it? It's not that difficult. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Our journey will lead us to more complicated sentences like these soon enough. Gut. And now back to our lesson at hand. Another commonly used phrase to express the concept of would like something is ich hätte gern. Now, it's easier to pronounce than ich möchte, and basically it means the same thing. So you could say, ich hätte gern ein Brötchen. Ich hätte gern die Suppe. Ich hätte gern Wasser. Or ich hätte gern ein Glas Rotwein. Note, however, that we can't use ich hätte gern with infinitive verbs, like we can with ich möchte. So while native speakers might say something like, ich möchte Englisch lernen, they would never say, ich hätte gern Englisch lernen. And later on in our journey, we'll learn the grammatical explanation for why we can say the one but not the other. For now, however, we just need to note that only the expression ich möchte works with infinitive verbs. Also dann, meine Damen und Herren, it's going to have to do it for this, die 5. Lektion in our Reise durch die deutsche Sprache. And our journey continues in the next lesson, but with a twist. You see, we're going to take our journey beyond the metaphor. Wie bitte? What's that, you ask? Beyond the metaphor? Was meinen Sie? What do you mean? Naja, I guess you'll just have to tune in and find out. Auf Wiedersehen und bis gleich.